Yesterday, when I was looking online for some images to use as future thumbnails on YouTube channel and my YouTube channel and stuff, I came across an article at Equestria Daily that was done by MarvelandPonder, and it was published basically the day before the special came out. And the editorial is entitled, "What does Equestria Girls do? What does Equestria Girls do that Friendship is Magic doesn't?" And this is what they said, and I quote. In fact, let me oh, for a sec. Hold on for a sec. Come on. There we go. Can't read anything sometimes without the glasses. But anyway, what does it say here? Get some light. Basically, like I said, the editorial asked the question of what does Equestria Girls do that Friendship is Magic doesn't? And again, this was done by MarvelandPonder, and I'll provide a link down below so you can look at it yourself. But this is what they said, and I quote. This is going to be quoting them, and I'll probably do a follow-up on some of what I read. But this is what is quoted, and I quote MarvelandPonder, who did this article, like I said, the day before the special came out. Here's what they said, and I quote. First of all, they're kind of excited about the special that came out the day before they did the article. I should have just done 2 to 11, maybe make it easier. Anyway, this is what they said, and I quote. So what they said, and I quote. Oh, because they even mentioned that it's almost 5 years of Equestria Girls, which is surprising. But this is how they look at this. They try to answer this question. It's by doing a comparison. The first comparison they do is world building. World versus city, as they put up in one area. World versus city. There. But anyway, this is how I look at it. World versus city. And I know I'm about 3 minutes in, so I do apologize. The first comparison, world building, they basically say, and I quote, this is quoting MarvelandPonder's article, "To start, there's a huge difference in how these two approach world building. Now, continuing on, re-quoting, I apologize for a little bit of slipping up there. They said, "To start, there's a huge difference in how these two approach world building. Let me tell you. I could stop right there at the superficial world versus city observation, and it already speaks volumes." In other words, what they're saying is that if you do compare the Friendship is Magic world with the Equestria Girls world, you can see that there's a big difference when it comes to potential of world building between the two. Continuing on, and I quote, "But let's take a deeper look. But let's look a little bit deeper, or farther. In MLP's case, Friendship is Magic, that is." Continuing on, and I quote, "Friendship is Magic has always embraced classic high fantasy world building. Equestria and its neighboring countries is a land with lore, histories, internal logic, monsters, magic, you name it." We always want to see more of it because it's so well established that there is more to see. No kidding. Continuing on, and I quote, almost as glorious as these creative and gorgeous design settings that I just want to dive into. And when you click on the link and read it yourself, you'll see exactly all the screen caps that he's talking about, the pictures and stuff. Continuing on, and I quote, Equestria is well suited for adventure and exploration. Easy for me to say. Why would an ensemble comedy need to be? Or why would an ensemble comedy need to be? It doesn't. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me reread that. I'm sorry, let me reread that. I quote Marvel and Ponder. Let me reread this. Equestria is well suited for adventure and exploration. Why would an assembled comedy need to be? It doesn't. But setting an assembled comedy in a high fantasy world opens up more opportunities for the kinds of moral-driven one-offs with the occasional two-parter Friendship is Magic wants to tell. Just ask the friendship map, aka the cutie map. Then there's Equestria Girls, that isn't focused on feeling bestiaries or ancient tombs at all. There's not nearly as much incentive to explore a world so similar to our own. Instead, Equestria Girls specializes in one thing and one thing only: unpredictability, undefined, and terrifying magic. Oh, hold on. Let me reread that. It says, instead, Equestria Girls specializes in one thing and one thing only: unpredictable, undefined, and terrifying magic. The question is simple. What happens when you bring magic, even if it's equestrian magic, and it's based largely on friendships, feelings, and desires, into a world like our own? That is a good question. Why fear, trauma, and personal demons why fear, trauma, and personal demons given real world destructive power, of course. Easy for me to say. Again, let me reread that. Let me reread this thing. It says, the question is simple. What happens when you bring magic, even if it's equestrian magic, and it's based largely on friendships, feelings, and desires, into a world like our own? Why fear, trauma, and personal demons given real world destructive power, of course. So basically what they're saying there is, if you go to a world like Friendship is Magic, where magic is commonplace, and you see all kinds of things like monsters and creatures of all kinds, it's not going to really jump out at you that much. I mean, it will, but not really. However, what they're saying is, if you bring that kind of magic into a world like our own, then it's going to basically create a lot of conflict, because you won't know what the heck's going on. Continuing on. When even the protagonists don't know how to control or cope with this new dangerous force, it leads to discussions on embracing it, releasing it, what it means for who you are, how you can protect the ones you love from it, etc. Even better, the best Equestria Girls stories pair the inability to understand what's going on with insecurity. So as the characters work on saving the day, they work through what's ever been destroying them. They work through what's ever been destroying them inside. That's what it says there. That basically what they're saying here is the reason the one thing that Equestria Girls does is it basically shows, almost in a real life situation, how a lot of people react with change. How we react when something changes about us and we don't know what that change is. How we deal with it, how we embrace it, how we use whatever gift we are given to help others, and so on. Now they do mention that the world building may be limited here, but the world building they do is always in the service of the characters. In other words, they're saying that instead of getting massive world building like you would do with Friendship is Magic, that instead you get world building in the form of the characters. In other words, in exchange of not getting massive world building, you get massive character development. Which I will admit, that is a good thing. That is a good thing. Honestly, it is. Now, the next thing they talk about is continuity. Seasonal versus story arcs, as they put it. And continuing on, and I quote, "Callbacks certainly happen in Pony, more and more as the series goes on. But if we're talking story arcs, the long-term stories are built as the staff goes along. This is often retroactive by looking back to see what's already there naturally." Easy for me to read here. Hold on, let me reread this. Okay, I apologize. Let me reread this. I know we're 11 minutes in. I do apologize. But let me reread this. And I quote, "Callbacks certainly happen in Pony, more and more as the series goes on. But if we're talking story arc, the long-term stories are built as the staff goes along. This is often retroactive by looking back to see what's already there naturally instead of trying to set up and foreshadow events to come seasons later." The active construction of the story can lead to some interesting turns, and gives the show staff the freedom to pursue any arc they choose, like giving Twilight a student, or heck, I don't know, a whole friendship school. It can be as character driven as they damn please. In other words, what they're saying is that with Friendship is Magic, they can pretty much do more character building. They can do a lot more with continuity than maybe Equestria Girls can in some sense, but we'll get into that in a moment. But basically, what they're saying is when the staff gets to play with continuity in Friendship is Magic, it gives them the freedom to continue and acknowledge past events, but move forward by adding in new elements, like, Starlight becoming the pupil of Twilight, and then Twilight opening up the friendship school, and so on. Now we get into Equestria Girls. And again, I'll provide a link so you guys can read it yourself if maybe I stumble over a few things here. But now we go on to Equestria Girls. And I quote, "On the other hand, there's a quote I like by Cheryl Connolly, film critic and author of Ponyville Confidential, The History and Culture of My Little Pony, 1981 to 2016. And it's about the Equestria Girls franchise." And this is what he quoted from Shirlene Connolly. And I quote, this is what Shirlene Connolly said, and they quote this. Quoting Shirlene Connolly, "I find them to be thoughtful, character-driven stories in which nothing is taken for granted, and actions always have consequences." That's what Shirlene Connolly said in her book. Now requoting MarvelandPonder, they say, "Every major Equestria Girls story is its own." Every major Equestria Girls story is its own contained thing, but everything comes back, and setup always leads to payoff down the line, far more than even the main show. So what they're saying basically is what you get in the Equestria Girls stories, even though they're self-contained, are always going to set up something for the future. A good example is the end of the first Equestria Girls basically set up Sunset Shimmer to be redeemed in Rainbow Rocks. Basically, Rainbow Rocks became her story. It became her story of redemption. Then the end of that the end of that basically set up Friendship Games. And I think at the end of Friendship Games, we got set up for Legend of Everfree, and Everfree pretty much set up a lot of what's going to be happening in the future. Basically, the one thing some people point out that Legend of Everfree set up at the end of their movie is establishing that the reason there was magic, equestrian magic, leaking into the human world was due to the crack in the portal, in the portal underneath the statue. Alright, continuing on, and again I'll provide a link so you guys can read it yourself. Off down the line. Continuing on, and I quote Marvel and Ponder here. Rainbow Rocks starts during the climax of the previous movie. Friendship Games is a result of both Equestria Goes 1 and Rainbow Rocks. The Legend of Everfree took what the characters went through in the previous movie and dealt with it with full, not to mention the catalyst of the whole story was revealed to be the portal damage in Friendship Games. What I say. And continuing on, and I quote, even the specials do it. The first two are set up for the next special or a later story, so the leaks foretold. In other words, the leaks that came out. And the third is clearly caused again by the portal breaking open in Friendship Games. Heck, Equestria Girls deals in so much foreshadowing and continuity, it even foreshadows Friendship is Magic. There's something. Continuing on, and I quote, so Connolly, this is what Marvel and Ponder said, so Connolly nailed it. The Equestria Girls series values the effects of each story as much as the story itself, which is where the reforming of it all comes in. Next one is Insiders versus Outsiders, theming redemption, redemption, and redemption. Continuing on, and I quote, all right, aside from the power of friendship, which is a given, there's the other obvious but deeply fundamental message in both the show and its spin-off. It's been a debate for a few seasons now whether or not the show redeems too many antagonists, whether there should be somebody who's just plain irredeemable. He even mentions it, puts a link there for someone else's article you could check out on that. From Nightmare Moon to Discord to Diamond Tiara to Starlight to Trixie, and on it goes. Excuse me. We even have a current will that will. We even have a current will. We even have a current will they reform, won't they reform arc going on. Okay, hold on, let me reread that, and I quote. We even have a current will they reform / won't they reform arc going on. Chrysalis is bound to return, which to us now translate to she's going to be redeemed or not redeemed. Even after she solely rejected redemption, we still talk about it that way because redemption and villain are linked in our heads. But that's only one half of the question. Friendship is Magic just isn't about Starlight and the other reformed villains. The show's heroes are redeemed too, in a sense. I once made the significant argument, especially in hindsight. Twilight herself was the show's first real redemption story. She by no means an antagonist, but she's given a second chance at life by discovering the power of friendship in no small part thanks to the main five. And we see this in all the girls in small ways. No matter what the personal failing is, whether it's a huge obnoxious ego or a crippling social anxiety, each of our heroes is always defined by their flaws and how they will grow from them. So the show posits that whether you're a villain or a hero, with friendship you can become a better person. Pony, dragon, dragonix, griffin, etc. And make up for lost time and past mistakes. Friendship is as much a tool for personal growth in the show as it is just something to value in. Okay. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Let me reread that. Friendship is as much a tool for personal growth in this show as it is just something to value in and of itself. We see that in every episode. A character learns a moral thanks to their friends, every goal they've achieved because of their friends' support, and in every redemption where they acknowledge and overcome who they used to be before those friends. So even in its less catchy, maybe it's more appropriate to phrase it like this: friendship is magic. Or friendship is redemption. Yeah, some people like to just say, why don't you just change the title of the show? Now, continuing on, and I quote, "Then there's Equestria Girls. Equestria Girls at its heart is even more about the redemptions than the established friendships. You thought that was possible? That's cute." That's what Marvel and Ponder said. I'm just quoting them. We already know, quoting Marvel and Ponder again, we already know the main six is dynamic and relationship. So the humane five aren't the focus. Although that's what the shorts are for. Filler to flesh them out, so even if you don't keep up with the main show, the girls aren't too underdeveloped. Sunset, the Twilight, and the villains are. The plot mattering long term takes the focus away from the depth of the relationships within the whole assembly, and it puts it squarely on how the depth is felt by one or two main characters going through redemption arcs. It gives them more time to focus on those redemption arcs to the point that they're some of the best developed within the franchise. Continuing on, and I quote, "Sunset Shimmer's shift from flat, one-dimensional, forgettable evil villain to outcast on a journey of bettering herself and making up for the past is now the heart of the series. And while not as masterful as Prince Zuko's arc from Avatar The Last Airbender, Sunset's arc is so well received because she's allowed to be the focus. Friendship is Magic has its heroes to focus on first and foremost, so the vast majority of its villains' arcs are secondary to them. Sunset is the protagonist, or rather, like Zuko, the deutragonist, or whatever they call it. Likewise, Sci-Twi, human Twilight, is less experienced, more anxious, not to mention traumatized version of Princess Twilight for a reason. These reforming characters face consequences for what happens to them and have to answer for what they do on top of trying to navigate an unexplained and at times, for them, extremely scary world. While I love Friendship is Magic to no end, the increased focus on one or two characters' continuity... okay, hold on, let me reread that. It says, while I love Friendship is Magic to no end, the increased focus on one or two characters' continuity and world building that emphasizes their arcs in Equestria Girls is something wonderful. Plus, Sunset is objectively best character, so there's that. Okay, let me just file that away for future reference. Maybe I'll read that off in the future again. Maybe I'll send it to Vega and Lankara so she can have it. But yeah, basically what we're getting there is, so basically what I'm getting there, and I'm sure, again, I'll provide a link so you guys can read it yourselves. What I'm getting there basically is the fact that is the fact that despite the differences, in tone and in structure and all that, it's basically Marvel and Ponder are basically saying that Equestria Girls, may be similar, but because most of the stories at times have been movie-based, it's given time for the characters to grow and be developed. It's given time for situations that are unknown to them to be developed, to be pondered, if you will, to be looked at, to be considered. The world building may not be as big as Friendship is Magic, but as I said earlier, what you get in return is basically world building for characters. In other words, you get massive character development. So, in a sense, yes, Equestria Girls may do some things better because, let's face it, they're not a 26 episode series yet. They're not to that point yet. But because of the fact that the main focus at times are animated movies and sometimes 44-minute specials, it allows for more time for story-driven development. Now, have there been hits and misses? Absolutely. There have been some hits and misses. And perhaps reading this article, some people may or may not agree with it. Heck, some people have already commented and said that they still are not too sure about Equestria Girls because, yes, it is basically a humanized version of the main six, the only connecting factor being Sunset because in reality she's actually a pony and not a human. To them, Equestria Girls may do some of these things better, but it just doesn't connect with them because all it is in their eyes and to the eyes of a lot of people, even to this day, is nothing more than Hasbro's attempt to cash in on the success that Monster High had, or Mattel, Mattel, I believe, had with Monster High. And that's all Equestria Girls is in many people's eyes, even to this day. Because Monster High became such a hit, Hasbro wanted a piece of that, and they figured, why not spin off My Little Pony into something like that? So that's basically why you got Equestria Girls. But overall, they do bring up some good points. However, I will say this. Yes, it does. Yes, the one thing Equestria Girls does is focus more so on a few characters instead of the characters it needs to focus on to really bring the Friendship is Magic fans in. I mean, you want to bring those Friendship is Magic fans in, then you need to take a page out of Friendship is Magic and start focusing stories, full length, 44 minutes, two-part 11-minute shorts, whatever, or two-part 11-minute shorts, whatever. You need to start focusing those on the other characters. In other words, you need to create stories. And the shorts, they're doing the job, probably, no doubt. There's no doubt they're probably doing the job. But you really need to take, to me, they need to take a page out of the Friendship is Magic book and say, okay, we need to create a story that for rarity. We need to create a story that focuses on the human rarity besides just our take on Rarity Investigates. We need something that's going to get people behind that rarity just like they got behind the pony rarity. Same with Rainbow Dash, same with Applejack, same with Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie. And I'm sure they've done that. The screenshots that pretty much show they've done that. But the point is, folks, you have to do more than that. You just can't just do this for about 11 minutes or so. You need to fully flesh out in 2 or 3 parts that story focused on that character. Now, hopefully they do that because according to information, one of the other specials that's supposed to come out soon is called My Selfie and I. My Selfie and I. What does that mean? Is that going to be what I think it means? Is that going to mean we're going to finally see human Sunset, and then that means Pony Sunset has to go back? Or does that mean the main six are finally going to encounter the humane six? Think about that. Think about that. That's a possibility too. We don't know yet, but hopefully with that upcoming special, and perhaps even one more movie to finish it off, which let's not deny that's going to happen or not, because it just might. Hopefully they have the opportunity presented in front of them to finally flesh out the human versions of these characters instead of just focusing primarily, with all due respect, on Sunset, Saitwai, Twilight Saitwai, and that's about it. You know, so hopefully they take the opportunity to do more with these shorts that they have and split them maybe into two parts, thus creating a full-length episode focusing on one character like Friendship is Magic has. So overall though, I'm going to provide a link below. Hopefully you guys will check it out. I will explain in the description to take your time to listen to this. Hopefully you did. It is a long run, and I will talk to you all later. God bless. Take care. I am out.